Hello and welcome to your Wednesday dose of wealth wisdom with me, Daniel Kennedy, your host, joined by the auspicious Louis Carter, who is going to be the project manager for Steadfast Construction and Design.
Hello.
Today, we are talking about the reality of doing a HMO build for other landlords. Are there pros of having a build team? And because we have to now keep them busy, is it worth it versus the risk? Because if somebody's job goes awry, the responsibility is squarely on our shoulders, and it could affect the other businesses that are all interlinked and synergistically linked. So just like raising the finance, you don't pay one person back, you're not going to be able to raise anymore. And now this can bleed over into the other companies. If we were to do a poor job on the HMO, that could then bleed into the property side of business. And having that risk of being able to, well, you have to keep your team employed because you need to pay them, and you don't want to be paying them to doing nothing. And that's the reality. So you have to do jobs for other landlords in between ours. And we're going to be discussing the risk of if that's worth it. And in summary, yes, it is. So podcast over. Thanks for joining us. Right, just kidding. It is worth the risk because the difference of price and the difference of finish is no comparison in compared to when you're using a main contractor, and there's a lot more control. And the one thing that's a big difference between your job and somebody else's job, I found, is that there was a hell of a lot more of an emotional attachment involved to the job. Like, I wanted things to be perfect, and it was quite stressful when things were going left and right, and as they do on building sites. So Louis has joined us for the beginning of the 7-bed on Edgbaston Road East. And how are you finding working with the team?
Yeah, there's a lot of tough work in there. There's a constant balance of trying to keep people motivated and moving the job forwards. It's a bit of an art and a science to it.
So what's your role going to be within the company for those of the people who don't know?
It will be overseeing the project from start till finish. So taking on a standard residential house that might not have any permission for commercial use, and converting that to a fully functioning multi-bedroom, 7-bedroom, for example, property to house lots of unrelated people. And I'll be dealing with collecting materials.
That's a very professional way of saying HMO. He develops HMOs.
Yeah. Taking it from start till finish with the team, using materials, making sure they got the right tools, everything in place for them to do their magic on the property.
That's good. So what I very, very really quickly realized and underestimated grossly was the amount of time it would take to manage accounts, get materials, and all the back end stuff of running a company. And it probably takes up a good 40 to 50% of my day. And when I'm running a few companies, we had to pull back on some of the services that we provided. And so Louis is here to replace my role within the company, and eventually Steadfast will be its own entity separate from myself as we let it fly the nest, as we were. And so every job for Louis, you're essentially going to be doing it for other people. Whereas there's a bit of a difference. When I do my jobs and when I do somebody else's job, it's very, very different. The standard's the same, but it's very emotionally taxing having to deal with stuff that I know how I want it to be, and then maybe the landlord has some changes that they want to make, and it can then push out the whole job. It's very difficult to manage the timelines, because initially I thought we would be in Lincoln now doing the job up there, but because of the extended timelines and people changing and the extras, the jobs have just taken a lot longer, and as we go on we'll learn more and more about realistic timelines. And I very nearly took on a 26-bed and then also a 38-bed, which would have been a 32-bed, which would have been an absolute disaster, because that would be a year job now that I'm aware of the timelines. However, I do think it's still worth it. So although when Louis gets more settled in the role and is able to run the company without my input, it's going to be an absolute golden asset. There's going to be no comparison to using a main contractor and having your own team. And this is what I'm really kind of pushing. I think the landlords out there who have enough jobs, you could really disrupt this building market, because it just tends to be the managers that have the sort of the back end stuff, because it's so intense. If you're able to just shoulder that burden until you get build a bit of a reputation up, turn out a few HMOs, you'll have a really long list of jobs that you'll be able to do. And then you can replace your role within that company. And then you have essentially a profitable company that you run. You can incentivize the guys by letting them have the profits, because I don't make any money from Steadfast. It's the ability of having a team that I know will do what they say they're going to do. That's way more valuable than trying to get any monetary gain from this. But again, that's very risky, because the reputation of KML, Homebug, is all interlinked with Steadfast. So if Steadfast do a really poor job, that I can't snake out and be like, oh, it wasn't my job, I wasn't really. You have to take responsibility. So there's a big risk, but it's definitely worth the rewards. There's lots of stuff that we're constantly learning about this build team, and like the indemnity insurance, the employment liability, the CIS, the taxes, the VAT rebates. And so there's a whole sort of Pandora's box of things that get basically revealed to yourself, and then you need to learn them. But ultimately, I really do feel that it's you should do it if you're going to be a landlord, and you can really dominate your space and provide a great service for other people, because lots of people are getting screwed over with builders. And although it's a lot more emotionally intense doing someone else's build, if you care and you're passionate about the job, it's in comparison, as I keep saying, it's definitely worth it. So with you coming on board, because you didn't have any experience really, you were a broker before, just managing different mortgages and getting clients loads of funds whenever they needed them.
Yep.
How have you found the transition? Because it's like your role is typically just organizing health and safety and getting materials on and making sure all the rules on site are adhered to.
Well, for me, I always take a bit of a macro view on these challenges that can come up, and there's transferable skills within that. Yes, I was dealing with finance, which to give you a handle on that was dealing with books of up to £60 million, and specifically commercial mortgages as well. But for me, I'm somebody who takes a very holistic view at stuff, and I like to think that I've got very good morals, and like to be a bit of a perfectionist, and taking a very close view at the property market. I could see that there was a lot of grey areas, and ultimately I see the point of view of investors, that they want speed, professionalism, transparency. They want to know when completion's going to happen, and at the end of the day they want to make a profit. From the bank's point of view, they want to know that there's as little risk as possible. And from the builder's point of view, they just want to understand what work is going to be carried out. So taking a very macro view on the situation, it was just about understanding, what level of skill is there within the team, what is the state of the property, what does need to be done, what are the hard facts, and work from there to backwards in regards to achieving the goal as quickly as possible, and just having good communication. Of course, there's lots of grey areas, but that's always something you can learn as long as you've got a good team around you. And it's been really, really encouraging that the team has been, they're high caliber tradespeople, and it's been encouraging as well that the landlord, Kelvin, gave really good feedback on the quality of work as well. We've had good feedback from the neighbours. They've taken an interest in the property. I directed them to the social media, and they actually came back, said they'd gone away and had a look, and they were they were wanting loads of free work, weren't they? Yeah, well, that came on early on when when we were new on the scene, and they weren't wondering what was going on with all these vans being around. But that sort of died down, and they've actually become little cheerleaders for us, we found. So it's all going in the right direction, and luckily it is all about having that good team there, and when you're there on the ground every day, you can understand what the problems are and how to resolve that, iron them out, and as long as everyone's happy, it'll all move in the right direction. It's just about exercising patience through the process, really.
And Louis being chucked in at the deep end, like he's doing a 7-bed, and then the next one it's going to be a 14 and the 13, and I'm going to be like, Club Tropicana set you free. And so where do you start? The question's got to be asked. If you're wanting to do this and you want to set up your own team, you see a niche in the market, you're seeing loads of people get screwed over by the short-term thinking, like the money on Friday, not the money in the future people, I call them. A good place to start is where I found our trades is we found a brilliant one in the Builders Talk group. So I put a few posts out and I was inundated by the offer that I made, and it was basically these profits get split between the trades. I will manage it. I'll do all the back end stuff. I just want a team that I can rely on. And then we've got a few laborers just from Facebook, and we've swapped out people, and now we've got a really keen team, and there's a real great culture. So one thing you really need to be careful of is the culture, because you've got these like really negative people who will just complain, and there are always issues, problems, and it's always going to be difficult. There's always things that you need to overcome. But if you have positive, upbeat people who are very nonchalant and don't take things to heart, it can run like an absolute dream. And then you have this ace in the hole, more deals stacked for you because you've got your own team. You get the joy of being able to provide employment and paying them really bloody well as well. To basically, it's done on a sort of, the more value you give to the market, the more money you get paid, and then that's split round to everyone, so everyone's really incentivized. And once you get it systemized a bit more, it takes less and less time, and you can eventually get it to the point where you're just tweaking here and there, and there's not really much that you need to do. It's an absolute ace in the hole. So that's why I encourage you, even if you're 1 or 2 deals, I wouldn't do it then. But when you get to the stage where you're constantly churning at bigger deals, bigger developments, bigger HMOs, you should definitely set up a subsidiary construction company. And I say, as the way to do that, it's recommendations, speak to the blokes, get them out there, have a core team, and then be able to expand for the bigger jobs where you have people on price work, but you have your core team on day rate. Some people might disagree with that, because I know there are big developers out there who have no one on day rate, and they just have a few people who are on salaried, and then they manage the jobs, and then they scale to having more people on price work. So there's so many ways you could do this, but I'm telling you and sharing the way that it's worked for me is having a core team, a plumber, plasterer, chippy, plasterer, builder, plasterer, and then a project manager and 2 laborers, and it's working like a dream, and I can't recommend it enough. And again, so that's all we're going to be discussing today, guys. Thanks for joining us. We had 2 weeks off because I was weak and unwell, but now we're back to full strength, and we'll be churning these episodes out more and more and more. So thanks for your time, and thanks for joining us, Louis.
Thank you very much.